Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think it is just afternoon for most of us here today. My name is Kellyanne Jolly, and I am delighted to be back again to be emceeing the webinar today. It's just I always love doing these webinars. I learn so much, and I'm sure you are going to learn a lot today yourselves. But first, before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional lands on which we are meeting today. And for me, I'm in Victoria. It's the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Well, welcome everybody. We have a lot of people online who have registered from far and wide across the country, and I believe even overseas. We've got a range of health professionals, carers, and patients. You're in for a treat today for this webinar. So the webinar is hosted by Head and Neck Cancer Australia, and the title's really all about navigating support through Australia's only specialist head and neck cancer helpline, and how fantastic it is to finally have this valuable service, which you'll hear all about shortly. But firstly, just a reminder, every day 14 people in Australia are diagnosed with the type of head and neck cancer. And over 17,000 people diagnosed between 2017 and 2013 and 2017 are living with the side effects of their treatment. Unfortunately, there's still no, as you would well know, no screening tests for head and neck cancer. So early detection is absolutely critical. Really important. It saves lives. And it also does mean less invasive treatment and a faster recovery, and also typically more likely to be curable. So please help sharing early detection messages, what some of the warning signs, symptoms, being aware of what's going on in your body. Tell your friends, family, and work colleagues so that we can pick this cancer up much earlier. For those who haven't participated in one of our webinars before, or you've forgotten, we do like to make them interactive. And so please, if you have any more questions or want to ask any questions, please use our Q&A function at the bottom of your screen as we go through, and we can pick those questions up. Thanks to all of those who've pre-submitted questions, and many of these have been already passed on to our speakers and our presenters, and hopefully a lot of them will be picked up through their presentation. But if anything else comes up for you, please pop it in the chat and we will try and address it as we go along the webinar. You would be aware, of course, that we're unable to address any individual cases. And if you do have any kind of personal questions, please contact your cancer care team or Cancer Council Australia on 131120. And I can now say you can contact our helpline on 1300 424 848 after this webinar. We do understand that there's a number of people who couldn't make it today live, or some people who may want to see our speakers and listen again. So we are recording the session today, which will be shared on social media and also on the Hanker website after this or in the next few days. We're also going to be sending, for those who've registered, an email out with a link to the recording, but also some promotional assets about the helpline. So a helpline flyer and a helpline poster that you can print out, particularly if you're in a service, to promote the helpline. And just finally, before we get into business, we love to hear your feedback and we love to hear commentary about these webinars. So we will be sending you a survey link at the end of the session. So please, if you could just take some time, a little bit of time, just to give us some feedback or any constructive comments that you want to give us so that we can make these webinars as valuable as we possibly can. Okay, let's get into the main part of the webinar today. We'll begin by hearing from Belinda and Simon and Nadia, who I'll introduce in a moment, who are going to really talk about everything relating to the helpline, what it's all about, what it does and what it offers. Then at the end, we'll have some time for some Q&A. So this is the time, if you have any questions that are coming up during the presentation, pop them in the comments. Then I'll be having a chat with Siobhan and Jody, who's going to provide their insights about how the helpline can be of value to members of their head and neck cancer support group and more broadly to the wider community. So that will, and then we've got another opportunity for some more questions of our panel, of all our speakers basically after that. So that's a bit of a rundown of what to expect. But firstly, let me just give you a little bit of an intro into our three speakers for this session. Firstly, I think most people would know Nadia, and I don't normally introduce Nadia this way, but she absolutely deserves it. So Nadia Rosen is the inaugural CEO of Head and Neck Cancer Australia, which we all know as HANCA, and she brings a wealth of experience over 15 years, both in not-for-profit and in state government in New South Wales. And since 2016, she's worked tirelessly alongside a whole passion of different network of clinicians, patients, carers, families to really grow and establish HANCA as the leading not-for-profit organisation dedicated to head and neck cancer. And I've seen that for myself over the years that I've been involved in these webinars, how much the organisation has really grown in stature and its reputation. Under Nadia's leadership, HANCA has become a national voice for those affected by head and neck cancer, and providing trusted information, education and support, while driving real awareness about head and neck cancer, and also advocacy efforts across the community and also the healthcare sector. So great to have you here with us today, Nadia. The next speaker is Belinda. I'm going to introduce you to is Belinda. And Belinda is a helpline nurse manager. She leads a dedicated team providing evidence-based head and neck cancer support to patients, carers and healthcare professionals across Australia. She's very qualified. She has a Master's of Clinical Leadership, a Bachelor of Nursing and a Graduate Certificate in Oncology. So she brings clinical expertise and strong leadership to her role. And as you're going to hear from Belinda shortly, she focuses on delivering personalised phone-based support, conducting thorough assessments and connecting individuals with tailored resources and care pathways. She's really deeply committed, as is Nadia, to consumer advocacy and education. And she has a background in triage nursing and a passion for patient-centred solutions, which is really important in improving outcomes for those affected with head and neck cancer. And finally, last but not least, we have Simon van der Stap. Now, Simon is a highly experienced counsellor and educator who brings compassion and clinical expertise to his role as a helpline counsellor for the Head and Neck Cancer Helpline. Now, he's also qualified. He has a Master of Counselling and Psychotherapy and a postgraduate diploma of counselling from the Australian College of Applied Psychology. Now, he currently works part-time as a mental health clinician with the Helpline, supporting patients and families affected by head and neck cancer. But he also works in private practice, where he focuses on workplace health, depression, psycho-oncology, and coping with sudden life changes. So I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of our speakers, and I think I'm going to pass to Belinda to lead us off. Thanks, Belinda.
Thank you, Kelly. Welcome, everyone, today to this webinar. As Kelly just introduced you, my name is Belinda, and I'm going to be talking about the exciting introducing Australia's first specialist head and neck cancer helpline. So I just would like acknowledgement of country. Head and Neck Cancer Australia acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional owners and custodians of the land, sea and nations, and pay our respect to elders past and present. So a little bit about today's presentation, what we're actually going to be covering. Firstly, we're going to talk about head and neck cancer and a bit of a snapshot. We'll talk about who we actually are. We're going to actually introduce the Australia's first head and neck cancer helpline. meeting our team, how we can help, how you can get in touch, and also the next steps. Then we're going to finish off talking about what's happening at Head and Neck Cancer Australia, government advocacy, and also Head and Neck Cancer Awareness Month. So just a little bit of a snapshot and statistics. So over 5,300 people are newly diagnosed each year with head and neck cancer. There's over 17,000 people living with head and neck cancer, on treatment, post-treatment, as Kelly said, living with the side effects of the treatment, surgery. 3.2% of all new cancers diagnosed, it represents in 2022. So that's an overall picture of all cancers diagnosed, that head and neck cancer represents 3.2%. Over 63% of tonsil and tongue-based cancers are actually caused by HPV, which is the virus that actually causes cervical cancer. The incident rates are higher in remote and regional areas, and men are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed. And as Kelly mentioned before, there is no screening, so early detection is key. So a little bit about Head and Neck Cancer Australia. As mentioned, it was launched in 2016, and we're Australia's only national charity dedicated to providing comprehensive evidence-based information and support people affected with head and neck cancer. And we just talk about our vision and our missions and goals and our strategic priorities. So it's always nice to actually see who you're talking to and what people look like. So this is all of the staff that actually work at Head and Neck Cancer Australia. So we're only a very small team of 9, but we work really closely together. So it's always nice to put a face to the name so you can see what we all look like. And just down the bottom, as you can see there, our helpline team members. Today we'll only be introduced to myself and Simon. Johanna is another nurse that works on the helpline, and she works on Thursdays and Fridays, which I'll cover a little bit later. And Megan is another wonderful nurse that works with us behind the scenes as well. So some of our resources that are actually available on Head and Neck Cancer Australia, they're free, accessible resources available to everybody. And that includes patients, family members, carers, and health professionals. They cover all types of head and neck cancers, from understanding diagnosis and treatment, surgical procedures, and emotional and practical resources. And we find that a lot of health professionals will sometimes get on here or onto our website, patients, family members, and actually research these. You can download them, print them off on a PDF file, and read for them later on. And that gives you really evidence-based information to go through. On our website as well, we have a lot of other different resources available. We have 3D animation, patient and carer videos, the webinar series, which we're conducting today. We've got a lot of other webinar series that we've saved on the website. We've got HPV, head and neck cancer podcast series, patient and carer stories, and a database of our peer support groups in Australia and New Zealand. So there's a lot of information on our website. It's a wonderful resource. So now talking about a headline, moving on to our helpline. So in March this year, actually the 19th of March 2025, Head and Neck Cancer Australia launched Australia's first specialist head and neck cancer helpline. The helpline is a free, confidential navigation and support service for patients, carers, family members, aimed at improving access to specialist information and support for all of Australians by head and neck cancer. So how we're actually able to start this head and neck cancer helpline was a wonderful initiative funded from the federal government, and it's a part of the Australian Cancer Nursing and Navigation Program. It's a government initiative aimed at ensuring all people with cancer have access to high quality and culturally safe care across Australia. The program is designed to help patients, family, and carers navigate the health system whilst receiving specialised support. And there's different tiers of that, federal funding, and at the bottom you can see Cancer Council, McGrath nurses. As we know, McGrath nurses, we had breast care nurses. We're now actually moving to an all cancer nurse. And where we sit up the top is head and neck cancer specialists, is being able to provide that specialised helpline and support for people with high needs and specialised needs. So the planning and implementation, it's been a long process. We started head and neck cancer started in July 2024, and looking at what we needed to do to get the helpline to be operational. So looking at the purpose and the scope, the engagement of healthcare professionals, patients, family members, and carers, what actually infrastructure, systems, IT support, integration, phones, all of those things, what we needed to do. And then also having the work staff on the phones, and what kind of specialised services and knowledge that we needed from our staff to actually run and support the helpline. So a little bit of background in the engagement. So the helpline, we actually reached out to patients and carers to get their feedback on what they thought was really pertinent for this helpline and what we could do to help make it really successful. So we at Head and Neck Cancer Australia reached out and we surveyed 191 patients and carers, and completed that survey. And the feedback we got is that they wanted to see a mixed skill set of nurses and counsellors and allied health on the phone lines. They wanted to be able to contact the phone lines if they're newly diagnosed, in the diagnosis stage, throughout treatment, and also assistance for long-term managing of side effects. And as I say to people, it's not just whilst you're on treatment, it can be, calling us up after 20 years after having treatment. So it's just really being there for people and family and carer members throughout the whole journey. 82% of respondents said they'd make contact, with that being about 157 callers. So we also needed to reach out to healthcare professionals to see their feedback, to get on the results of how to run the helpline and what would actually be beneficial. So we actually interviewed a variety of multidisciplinary team members, including speech pathologists, head and neck cancer nurses, dietitians. Just under 50% had actually worked with head and neck cancer patients for over 10 years, and 92% indicated that they would actually refer their patients, carers and family members to the helpline when it was operational. So who we actually are and who's on the team and who will you speak to if you call. So as of March 2025 until next year, we will be having myself. So as I said, I'm the nurse manager. I work 5 days a week on the helpline and answering calls. And as I said, my background is a head and neck cancer nurse in experience in chemotherapy and radiotherapy. We also have another nurse on our helpline that works Thursdays and Fridays, Johanna. And Johanna has a background in surgical head and neck cancer. And then we also have Simon, who you'll be hearing from very shortly. He is our counsellor on the helpline, and he works 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Moving forward in the next phase, we will be looking at recruiting additional 2 extra staff, and that will be determined on the demand and the service evaluation of what was actually required, to making sure that we fit the needs of the service of the helpline from feedback. So how can we help? So it's designed to give people access to specialised information and support through all stages of their head and neck cancer journey. As I said, newly diagnosed, through treatment, and managing long-term side effects. And that may be, as I said, 20 years later down the track, managing these long-term side effects that people are dealing with. And it's not just, as I said, for patients, but also for carers and family members, of caring for people with managing long-term side effects and letting them know that we are also here for them to help to support them as well. It might also be navigating, someone's got a new diagnosis and accessing our website. As I said, there's a lot of information on our website, and helping people to navigate that information on the website, where to go, and helping them to decipher what's needed. And then we can actually email them out 3 different documents so that they can review them in their own time, maybe making a follow-up phone call to see if they have any questions. So it's just helping people to navigate information. We'll also listen and give support, as I said, that free confidential navigation, and providing tumour-specific and evidence-based information. We'll connect patients and carers and family members to support groups. As we said, we've got a list of support groups located on our website. So what the nurses do in the nurse navigation. So we will streamline information, as I said, sending right information or directing callers to information where they could get the correct information that they may need. We may give clinical explanations on why things take so long, the processes of having the side effects, or generally a mask preparation, what's actually required of that. And maybe also just explaining the healthcare professionals, what radiation therapists are, what nurses do, what radiation oncologists do, just explaining those things if they've never been exposed to the healthcare system and some of these specialties that they will come across. It might be we've have phone calls from people that are isolated, and it's just nice to have someone to talk to and understand what they're going through. And also caller support and health advocates. So if people have been given some information and they're not quite sure where they go next, and whether they seek a second opinion, or whether they just want to get some feedback on, and just have someone to listen to. And also giving clinical knowledge of chemotherapy and radiation and surgery, so that if they need some navigation, where to find information. And we always, particularly, we do let people know that it's always important to go back to their treating team. We do not replace their treating team, which we will go into a little later, but they engage with their treating team. So we are more of a navigation, directing them where to find that information. Some of the information that the surgical nurse specialist may provide is expert guidance on hospital and community care processes, what will actually happen when you go into the hospital and around surgery, and what all the different treating teams and so forth. Educate patients and carers about the surgical procedures that may be occurring. The patients may have been given all this information, but just having someone to talk to about it that understands that. Delivers individualised and holistic support. And identifies and navigates common challenges faced by patients in the community. Support self-advocacy and patient empowerment. I think that's really important. And for being able to provide resources and understanding the options, so patients are making an informed decision. So some of the sort of like comments that we've got back from some of the patients, like, I had head and neck cancer 5 years ago and I was in remission, and now it's back and the doctors want to operate, but I just don't know what to do or where to go or who do I call, or and so forth. So helping them navigate those kind of questions. Another one, I've noticed a lump in my neck for 6 months and I'm worried about it. Could be cancer. What's the process of getting diagnosed? Where do I go? Who do I speak to? I'm in a regional remote area, and helping those people navigate those kind of decisions. I've had a laryngectomy and I'm going on holiday. What kind of things should I know or be mindful about when I'm traveling? Things that I need to put, things to know, equipment I need to have, contact details if there's a nearby hospital, if I run into trouble, things like that. So just knowing those kind of options are available. So I'm going to hand over to Simon now, and he's going to talk a little bit about his role on the helpline and talk about Lorna's story.
Thanks, Belinda, and hello to everyone that's joined us. I know there's about 220, so welcome, everyone. I'd very happy to introduce you to Lorna. And Lorna, I think you're also joining us today, so we're very grateful that you've given us permission to share your story. Lorna called us several weeks ago, and to say that Lorna has claustrophobia would be a gross understatement. Just been diagnosed with head and neck cancer and has to have radiotherapy, which many people would understand that involves getting fitted for a thermoplastic mask. And Lorna was absolutely terrified, to such an extent that she was, and we were really worried that she wouldn't actually make it into treatment, which of course would be very, very bad news. And Lorna was getting all sorts of advice from her loved ones and her family and her friends that all of these fears and phobias were irrational and she had to just grin and bear it. But all of that stuff that we get from our families when we're in that state of crisis just really isn't helpful. So what we did, we had, I think we ended up having about 4 counselling sessions on the phone. And the first thing that we talked about was that it's absolutely essential to advocate for your own health, to not be someone who's just a passive recipient of all of this medical care, but to kind of be on the front foot. And at that time, the open face mask that you can see here wasn't available. So the second thing that we did was to work on those extreme kind of catastrophic thoughts. So in the counseling game, we call that catastrophizing. And we worked on a less extreme version of those thoughts. So when someone has extreme thoughts and extreme feelings, their behaviors around that are likely to be extreme as well. And that could be avoiding treatment altogether. So we ended up coming up with some thoughts and approaches that were less extreme. The anxiety wasn't gone. It was just a little bit more manageable, a little bit more tolerable for Lorna. And with a bit of Valium under her belt from her very understanding GP, she ended up getting over the line. So fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, she was able to advocate for herself to such a degree that they provided this open-faced helmet that you can see. And we know that this type of helmet, mask. We know that this type of mask is not suitable for everyone, but certainly for Lorna, it became available, and Lorna's actually become a very, very passionate advocate for this kind of mask, and hopefully that's going to become the norm. If people request it, it should be available. So we can go to the next slide. And again, Lorna, if you're out there in Zoom land today, thank you so much. In terms of what I normally do with patients and carers who call the helpline, I actually look at what's already working in their life, because this is really big stuff and people tend to be very, very overwhelmed. So we'll look at what supports the person already has in place. What people have you got in your life that you can lean on? What activities and hobbies can you still do while you're going through all of this treatment? It's a judgment-free zone. Nobody, especially me, is going to judge you for all the weird little coping strategies that you've got. And the first thing I tend to do is to help the person realize that all of their thoughts, feelings, and reactions are completely normal. Because having bits of us removed, being inside radiation machines, having chemotherapy, that's not normal. How we feel about it at any given moment, that is normal. So if you're angry about it, that's normal. If you're sad and really overwhelmed and depressed about it, guess what? That's normal as well. And we also work with as a team to come up with ideas for living well. And that means leaning into what's truly important to you and continuing to do those things in spite of what's going on. Not waiting for this cancer thing to be out of the way, but doing those things right now in the now. And we also work on managing those intrusive, overwhelming thoughts, that negative self-talk and the anxiety. And I've put the word managing in there rather than trying to get rid of, because these things are just going to happen and they're going to loom pretty large. And we'll try and come up with ways just to smooth things out, to keep things simple, because people are overwhelmed with stress, with anxiety, with depression, with worry, with grief. And we can absolutely have those conversations. But the first thing that we need to do is just calm the noise down a little bit so we can start putting strategies in place. And one thing that I make sure that I don't do, if the person's being treated for depression, anxiety, whatever it might be, by an existing health professional, I certainly don't want to tread on that person's toes. But I do come alongside the person and make sure they're getting as much support as possible. What have we got next? So these are the ways that people can get in touch with us. They can just give us a call, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, 1300 424 848. If the person's a little bit reluctant to give us a call and speak live on the phone, that could be for a few reasons. Maybe they're not confident with their speech. Maybe they've had oral surgery on their tongue or their jaw, or there's radiation changes. Maybe they've had a laryngectomy and they're still not confident with voicing, or they're not voicing at all. They can contact us filling out a form on the website. So we get it at our end. All their information is there, and I can email them back. We can do a live text chat in the moment, just the person and myself. Or if it's a medical question, I make sure that I try and stay in my lane and make sure I refer that over to my medical colleagues. But if I am having those chats, whether it's on the phone or via text, if it's a medical question, I'll absolutely provide that referral, but I will check in with the person about how they're feeling. And if they'd like to talk to me about whatever might be bothering them, and I'll absolutely make some time to do that. And we can also send you out free resources, posters, pamphlets, brochures, whether you're a patient, carer, or healthcare professional, we can absolutely get those things sent off to you. During the time that I've been talking, we've got 2 messages on our helpline. So at the end of this webinar, I'll be attending to those. So leave us a message and we'll get in touch with you. You can also refer someone to the helpline. If you're a carer or a family member and you'd like us to talk to your loved one, we are absolutely more than happy to do that. But we would encourage the person themselves to get in touch with us, rather than us having to cold call someone and they don't know what it's about. So we'll make sure that your inquiry gets to the right person as well. As I mentioned on our website, if you've had a Larry, you're post-operative, you've had some radiotherapy, or you're just not confident or comfortable with how you sound, you can use that live chat feature. So this is what we can't do. So we're not a crisis service, so we don't replace existing teams. People do ring us in various states of being overwhelmed, but if it becomes too much, we'll make sure that we refer them to the appropriate service. We do get the occasional inquiry about financial assistance. Unfortunately, that's not something that we can provide. We can't provide advice or guidance on complementary or alternative therapies. We always advise the patient or their carer just to check in with their multidisciplinary team. The Cancer Council also has some really good literature on that stuff, and I've sent quite a few patients some really good printed resources. We're more of a signposting service. We don't replicate or duplicate existing services. So we come alongside the person and give them support in that way. We can't contact their cancer treatment team on their behalf, only because we're a very, very small team at the moment. We are looking to expand, but we just make sure that we try and stay in our lane there. And I think this is what's to come. So please watch this space. Our helpline is going to be expanding, and the services that we're going to be offering will be expanding alongside. And that includes a translation service as well. We are already doing plenty of in-service presentations. We're pretty busy at the moment. We will be looking to start our very own peer support group run by myself and my colleague Belinda. So watch this space. There's going to be some news about that coming through very shortly. All right, I think this information is best handled by our CEO, Nadia.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks Simon and Belinda, and hi everyone. Thanks for joining today. It certainly is a really exciting time for Head and Neck Cancer Australia, and I know there are people on the line who've followed our journey and been part of our journey since we were called Beyond 5. And so the launch of the helpline in March has really been a pivotal moment for us. And I'm very grateful to everyone who's been involved and the involvement that we've had from the community, particularly over the last 6 to 9 months, in really shaping what the helpline was going to look like and what the needs were, what people wanted to see from the helpline. And it's been really interesting. Not really interesting, but just and not particularly surprising. But what has been really in demand is Simon's time. It's that counselling service. And that's what we're hearing from people, is that, you know, we get amazing gold star treatment in Australia. We're so incredibly fortunate, but unfortunately there's not always that support given to, you know, family members, friends, patients themselves after they finish that acute period of care and they're adjusting to their new normal, and what life looks like, how that's impacted their, you know, relationships, social situation, work, and having someone to speak to sometime. And I think Lorna's quote says that sometimes it's just easier having a stranger to talk to rather than a family member or a friend. So we're really finding that the counselling service, even in just, you know, the short time that we've been up and running, has been in demand. And as Belinda mentioned, we'll be looking to add to the helpline. So essentially, as part of the grant funding from the federal department, we'll have the equivalent of 4 full-time people on the helpline by the end of the funding, which is middle of 2027. And over the next sort of 6 months or so, we'll be looking at some of the statistics that are coming in from the helpline. What are people calling about, and bolstering the service? Does it make sense to add a counsellor, a nurse, allied health? I think there's already a question in the chat about how we approach allied health, and it's certainly on our radar to expand the service over time to incorporate support amongst the different allied health specialties as well. I think we really finding that it's answering those questions from people who are experiencing a symptom and they're not quite sure whether they should be concerned about it, and reinforcing the importance of getting along to your GP or getting along to your dentist to get something checked out. It's people who are newly diagnosed, but they're not connected to their cancer care team yet. It's providing them with reassurance, answering some of their questions before, you know, they're actually being held by their cancer care team. And it's also the people who have finished that acute period of treatment and they're coming out the other end and they're not necessarily in contact with their cancer care team on a day-to-day or a weekly basis, and it's supporting them in that survivorship period. So I think, as both Simon and Belinda said a few times, it's not a clinical service, it's not a crisis service. The idea is that we're providing a service where we walk alongside patients, family members, and the cancer care team, and help people navigate. There's a lot of services, there's a lot of information and support that's out there, and we're helping people navigate this, you know, minefield of information that comes their way, and helping them pick out what's important at different, you know, times in their journey, so that they receive the support that they need, regardless of where they are at during their cancer journey. So look, we'll be learning. It's a brand new service for us. What's been great is that we're working, as Belinda mentioned, this is part of a much broader government program as part of the Australian Cancer Plan. And we're working very closely with Cancer Council Australia, with the McGrath Foundation, and with other cancer tumour groups. And the idea is that we're all working together and that we're referring between our different services. So we're not duplicating, we're each providing a different level of support. So If it's that financial support, as Simon mentioned, or if it's help with accommodation, then we'll refer you back to the Cancer Council, because that's what they're most skilled to help you with. And we're receiving calls from McGrath nurses who are now known as all cancer nurses, and they're looking after head and neck cancer patients. And if they're not necessarily aware of everything they need to know about head and neck cancer, they can also call in to speak to Belinda and Johanna, who can provide them with that specialist head and neck cancer clinical knowledge. So look, it's a really exciting time. We'll certainly be learning a lot as we go along, so we'll appreciate any feedback that the community has about, what else could we be doing to improve the service, what's worked, what hasn't worked. So please, as everyone has already done over the last 6 to 9 months in helping shape what this service looks like in the first instance, please continue giving us your feedback, because it will shape how it grows over time. And looking at other cancer charities who started off with a very small service like the one that we're starting off with, they've since grown to a much bigger service, and we're hoping that we get to the end of this funding period and that we're able to continue the service and grow it, and so that we can reach and support more people. So, but look, I've been brought in here at the very end to also just, I guess, share a little bit about some of the other work that Head and Neck Cancer Australia is doing beyond the helpline. And so one of our core strategic priorities is raising awareness about head and neck cancer, and it's advocating to improve patient support and outcomes. And what we've been really busy doing over the last year or so, over the last couple of years really, is raising awareness at that federal government level about what is unique about head and neck cancer, and why more funding, federal government funding support and policy change is needed to support this very unique and complex group of cancers. And what we've specifically been advocating for over the last year or so is funding for facial prosthetics. So people who have a diagnosis of head and neck cancer and have had part of their face removed that can't be reconstructed surgically, and following their cancer surgery, they require an external facial prosthetic. And currently in Australia, there's no federal government funding or state government funding for that. We're not talking about a huge number of people, but for people like Tracy, who you can see on the screen, who had her nose removed as a result of an aggressive skin cancer, she will need a facial prosthetic, a prosthetic nose, which costs around $5,000 or $6,000. They're made of silicone. They last a few years, depending on how often someone uses them, but they do wear out. And every time you need a new one, they cost a few $1,000s, slightly less than when you have your first one made, because they use a mould and they can create one with the mould, so they're slightly less expensive. But what we've been talking to the government about is having a dedicated funding scheme for head and neck cancer patients who need facial prosthetics, similar to people who've had breast cancer and need a breast prosthesis. If you're in that situation, funding's been available since 2008. So look, we're asking for government funding. We were really pushing to get a pre-election commitment, but didn't quite get there. But what we have been successful doing is really advocating to have an independent review of cancer prosthetic funding in Australia. So we've been working closely, as many cancer groups have, with the federal government over the past few months, and an independent auditor, the KPMG, who are looking at the state of cancer prosthetic funding in Australia, where the gaps are, and really painting the picture of why the funding is so desperately needed for head and neck cancer patients who need external facial prosthetics. So look, we know that their review is due to be completed in July, and we're hoping to get an update in the latter half of this year about what funding may be available for head and neck cancer patients. So look, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone, because we've had so many people from the community support this advocacy campaign by writing to their local Member of Parliament or joining us at meetings with Members of Parliament, and having that patient voice of someone who's literally missing a nose or an ear or an eye or part of their cheek is really obviously resonating with Members of Parliament. And we're really hopeful that we'll get the funding over the line. So thank you for your support in this advocacy piece. And just the next slide is, what we do every day. One of our sort of strategic priorities, it's raising awareness about head and neck cancer. As we've said a few times in the webinar, there's no early diagnosis, there's no screening, and so early detection really is key. So it's raising awareness constantly about head and neck cancer, the changing nature of head and neck cancer, that it can be someone who's otherwise healthy, who literally will find themselves with an ulcer on their tongue or a lump in their neck. And the sooner these, signs and symptoms that can seem benign checked out, the more likely it is that you'll get a diagnosis and then be put on the track to getting a referral to a head and neck cancer multidisciplinary team to support. So World Head and Neck Cancer Day has been a thing for many, many years. It's on the 27th of July. A few years ago, we claimed July as Head and Neck Cancer Awareness Month. Rather than just spending one day talking about head and neck cancer, we spend all of July we spend 365 days talking about head and neck cancer, but specifically inviting our community to do whatever you can, in whatever way, small, medium, large, to raise awareness about head and neck cancer with friends, family, work colleagues. So this July, there's many different ways that people can get involved. You can sign up for Dry July. You can literally just share a social media message with your connections, or you can host a Soup for the Soul, which is our one of the fundraisers we do every year, where you can share a bowl of soup and talk about, some of those long-term side effects of head and neck cancer, which result in some people literally having a soft food or liquid diet for months, if not years, following treatment. So there's lots of different ways that you can get involved in the work that we're doing, but they're just a few for the moment. So that's my 2 slides, and I'm happy to pass back to Kelly. I think we're going to have a Q&A.
Thanks so much, Nadia and Belinda and Simon. That was a terrific overview of everything relating to Head and Neck Cancer Australia, really, the helpline and all the other support and the wonderful work that you're doing. So, and I know that we've got a few questions coming up in the chat. So we've got all our panel here. So I'll just go through a few of the questions. I'll just start with one before I go in. And I think, I'm not sure who's the best to answer this one, but I think I did notice on the website that you don't at the moment have translation options for those who perhaps English isn't their first language. Is that something that you're hoping over time, if you feel there's a demand for that will, knowing that you're in the very early stages, and I get that, and what potentially, if there's someone who is in that situation, what process or what they may do to help them to be able to get access to the helpline? I'm not sure who's best to answer that one.
That's that one. We're actually just about to add an accessibility tool to our website, which will automatically translate a lot of the information that's on the website into lots of different languages. And we're also just about to sign up for the translating interpreter service. So that will become available quite soon. So if people do need an interpreting service, they can let us know and we can have that service assist. So that should be coming soon.
Oh, fantastic. That's fantastic. All right. Well, I'll have a look at we'll look at some of the questions here. There was a question here from Anne about what is, I think, Simon, the mask you were talking about. Does it have a particular name? Has it become the Lorna mask, or?
I think it should be named the Lorna mask because if that becomes the norm, it needs to be named just that. Yeah, I think it's an open face mask, and as far as I know, not everybody is going to be suitable for that. But if they are, they should absolutely ask for it. And like Lorna did insist on
it. Yeah, thanks, Simon. Hope that answers your question, Anne. Now, I think, Nadia, you kind of picked up a little bit about the allied health service question, which is really around how to tackle issues relating to dietetic, speech, physio, if someone was to ask those sorts of questions. But is there anything more we need to add there?
Look, I guess we've got, we're really fortunate that there's a huge amount of engagement with Head and Neck Cancer Australia in the work that we do. And we've currently got a network of people like Siobhan, who's just about to come on the screen, so speech pathologists, physiotherapists, dietitians from across the country. So at the moment, if we receive, queries regarding allied health, we'll certainly use our network to help people get the answers that they need. And it is about, I guess, assessing how, it is obviously a small service, but moving forward, how we could potentially include allied health as part of the helpline. And not just for patients and carers, but it could also be to help people who, allied health clinicians who are based in regional areas who may not see neck cancer patients all the time, and how we can support them by linking them with other allied healthcare professionals or our own helpline team. So it's something that will evolve over time and will certainly be guided by the clinicians that we've got within our community at the moment as to how we best approach that.
Yeah, okay. We've only got a couple of minutes and then we'll need to move on. But I just wanted to pick up, I might have missed it, but is the helpline, because this leads into one of the questions here, is the helpline open to outside Australia?
No, unfortunately not at the moment. It isn't, because all of our advice, we have had contacts outside Australia, and usually they will come through via the web inquiry that we found. But unfortunately, due to us focusing on the Australian healthcare system, that's our at the moment. So yeah, so it is based on the navigation that we provide is what's available within Australia.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Tony, who was asking some questions from New Zealand. I thought I'd ask that question before we went into too many more relating specifically to New Zealand. But I think one of the questions that Tony did ask, which I had on my list, is that is there any limitation? And I suppose as you get more busier, this might be in terms of the time limit, like, is it 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever you need? And how many times can you access the service? Once, twice, three times. Is there anything around that yet, or is that something you just look at demand?
Yeah, I mean, I can probably talk and then let Simon talk as well from his perspective. At the moment, we're finding that since operating, if we answer we haven't had that at the moment. We answer people's questions, we direct them, we encourage them if they need to. We're mindful if we don't want someone to become reliant, but we want to be able to be there to support them. And we're finding that we provide that navigation support, direction, and they feel confident to be able to move forward from that. So it's actually been really well received, and really kind of they're usually just ringing for a specific reason or to follow up a couple of times. So at the moment, if it's something that we need to look into, we will, but at the moment it hasn't been an issue. But Simon, particularly from his perspective, because the counselling sessions that he's actually attending, I'll let Simon talk about that as well.
Thanks, Belinda.
Yeah, sure. We're achieving quite a lot with single sessions at the moment. It's amazing what you can get done in 35, 45 minutes. But we are also working with the magic number 3, especially if we need to work with the patient and teach them those CBT skills. It might take more than one session just for them to start practicing. With Lorna, for example, we had 3 sessions. So at the end of session 3, she was actually a lot more used to using those skills. Sometimes it's 2 sessions. It might be an initial conversation on the phone, and I might say to the patient, it sounds like today was really helpful to you. Would you mind if I checked back in with you in a couple of weeks from now, just to see how you're doing? And I've never heard no. I've only heard yes so far. So it's a brief number of sessions, but we can actually do an awful lot in the time that we've got.
Yeah, well, that's terrific to hear and just shows the skill that you have and the willingness of the people who you're working with. So thanks for that, Simon. Very quickly, I think, Marie, you're asking the contact information on screen. I think that's for the helpline, I'm assuming. So I'm sure that we could provide that to you. And I think Mark's asking about the chat option work. How does it work for those who can't speak? And I think you did cover this, Simon, around through the texting, correct? Yeah.
There's a little icon on the web page, and I think it says live chat now. Click on it,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
opens the chat. And one of us are sitting here waiting for you to do that. So a little noise will come up, and away we go. It's that simple.
There you go, Mark. Sounds like it's there for you. Sorry, Nadia.
I'll just jump in there. So you'll get asked a few questions in the first instance, and you might just get asked, I think it's, your name and what type of support you're needing, and then you'll just hold for a couple of seconds while whoever's on the helpline will pick up the live chat, and then you literally can just type away and ask any questions, and that's a live chat between each other. Yeah.
Thank you, and thanks for your questions. We might need to move on to our next session so that we give them a great opportunity before we finish our webinar. So thank you, Belinda, Simon, and Nadia, and to everyone who's contributed through your questions. Okay, now I'm going to pass to introduce two people, Siobhan Gleeson. Now, Siobhan is a speech pathologist at Canberra Hospital. And she also coordinates the head and neck cancer support group there. And I believe, Jody, you either have been a coordinator, and I think you might have stepped back, but you can clarify that for me. And also, as well as that, Siobhan is a valued member of the HANCA Clinical Advisory Group. So welcome, Siobhan. And we have Jody Mudge, and Jody is a former nurse at Canberra Hospital. And is a foundational member and consumer rep for the Canberra Head and Neck Cancer Support Group. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Jody is also an expert contributor for HANCA's resources, so very much involved in the organisation as well as support group. So I might just start just by, I guess, just asking you how you got involved in the support group in the first place. So perhaps, well, Jody, I think you're off mute. We'll start with you.
It was about 3 years after treatment. I reached out to a speech pathologist and nurse at Canberra Hospital and said that if you ever start a service, a support group, I'd love to be involved. And then we started from there. It took us about a year and a half to get it off the ground, and we've been running for a couple of years now, and it's been a very learning experience, and hopefully we're helping a few people.
Yeah, probably very rewarding as well. So thanks, Jody. What about
very
you,
much so.
Yes, I'm a speech pathologist at Canberra Hospital, and when I started working in the head and neck cancer space, I'm very passionate and trying to do everything we can to improve the lives for people. So I kind of fell into it that way. My colleague and speech pathologist was really the driver with Jody and a lot of other members at Canberra Hospital in starting it up. But that's how I kind of fell into it, and I am enjoying it so much, and I haven't stopped since.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. I might start again with you, Siobhan, but having been involved in the support group for a little while, both of you, and I know that we heard from Belinda that in setting up the helpline, there were a number of people that were involved in feeding into that and what was required. But can you tell us the kind of issues, perhaps since your time involved in the support group, what are patients raising or in the forum within the support group? What kind of issues are really important to them and they're interested in knowing or learning about? I'll start with you, Siobhan.
Yeah, I think there's such a broad range of topics of concerns for people, but really I think a lot of it is that we hear and we're always talking about is adjusting to life after treatment. especially when talking about, a common challenge for everyone is eating and drinking, talking, speech, whether it be due to radiation side effects or the physical changes from surgery as well. We often go through a lot of topics like dental cares, exercise, returning to work, managing fatigue. And I think it's not just the physical changes that people experience, it's how they impact their confidence or their relationships or participation socially as well. A lot of emotional challenges, fear of recurrence, the anxiety around that, particularly to, people feel a lot of isolation, whether it be, not being able to go to the cafe because they're worried about their eating or drinking, or that loss of social connection after treatment, or even some people at the beginning as well of that cancer diagnosis time, and then, their friends and their support network changes. And then really the other one is sort of, that information seeking or the practical challenges. How can they navigate the healthcare system, especially for some people who have finished treatment and it's, different in every cancer centre, but they may not be linked in with their clinical team anymore, and how do they get back linked in with them when concerns come up? Kind of the most fun, and I'll let you go over it, Jodie, as well.
Yeah, is that your experience too, Jodie, or have you got something else that's really stood out for you?
It's pretty much all that. There's a big focus on eating and social eating, and will we ever return to what we were before, back to normal? And it's more about finding the new normal, what we can eat and what we can't do and what we can do, and ways about getting to do those things, and reaching out to the people in the group who have gone through similar, and their ideas about how they may help you, or ideas that may work for you, and some do and some don't.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think just, one other is the coping strategies that are shared amongst people. Some things are going to work for some people and it's not going to work for others, but it's that sharing of the lived experience and the issues faced that can sometimes be most beneficial.
So not feeling alone, that you're going through this alone, and I really like what you said, Jodie, about coping and working through what's the new normal for you. I thought that was a really good piece.
It's a big thing to get used to, and it's a really hard issue to get used to, because it's very easy to think about what you used to be able to do, but you have to focus on what you can do now.
Yes, very good point. So the helpline, of course, is not replacing support groups. Of course, it's an added piece to that. So what do you think having a helpline will do? How will it make a difference, do you think, to your members and to other people who are going through head and neck cancer at whatever part of their journey? Is there anything that really that sort of stands out to you that you think is really going to make a difference?
Yeah, I think it's just a great resource as well for other people to tap into, as well as their own healthcare. And what you all talked about before, it's like with a support group, it's usually after the radiation or the operation's finished. There's not a lot of peer-to-peer stuff happening. And then for like myself, who's past that big step of 5 years, I could ring the hotline now and just say, instead of having to ring a cancer nurse and ring both. And it's just I think a great resource. I've already recommended it to some of our group and some other people who I've met who have had head and neck, that maybe they could reach out to the Henkel website and the new service that they have, because the more service and more help we've got, I think the better we can cope.
Yep, absolutely. What about you, Siobhan? Are you similar?
Yes, I think echo everything that Jodie said, but a dedicated helpline for head and neck specifically is already invaluable for this community. And I think across the continuity of, I like to use the word roller coaster as opposed to journey, because it's a lot of up and downs. But the roller coaster, even at the time of diagnosis, before a person is linked in with their head and neck specialist nurse, or they know all their care team, they can just call the helpline to put any questions they have at ease to begin with, I think is crucial for a lot of people going through treatment. Also, I think, the accessibility of it is such a key feature. And, from a support group perspective, there's not everyone is going to access a support group because that's not the kind of support that they're after, or they might not feel comfortable sharing. So I think having the live chat function for people who have trouble speaking, or even just the telephone call, like Nadia or somebody else said, sometimes it's not your family or it's not your friend that you actually want to talk to. You want to talk to somebody else. So it's really breaking down those accessibility barriers for people that may not have had support or had easily accessible support before. And similar to, that goes for rural and regional people that might not just, be able to physically attend support groups or attend online for issues. I think it's going to open up a whole new world for support for those people. I think I see it too as, like people have said, it's that navigation service. It's connecting, it's going to connect people with services that they might need. Or like you say too, Jodie, I think, some cancer centres are different. And after that 5-year mark, once you're discharged from your radiation oncology surgical team, but you're still managing those ongoing side effects, and you've got questions, it's, or who do I ask now? Or how do I get that support again? Or I'm concerned about this. So I really see the hotline being that navigation service and being able to link those people who are calling in with the services or point them in that direction, kind of bridging the gap, I guess, is mostly. And I think the other big thing, which sometimes we can underestimate potentially, is the support for caregivers and their family. We consider the person holistically, but sometimes the support that's actually needed for the carers or the family can be forgotten about. And, some people I know, when working with them, they don't want their family member to call the head and neck nurse for all of these different questions. Or the family member doesn't feel like they can call the head and neck nurse all the time for all those questions because they're not the patient. But whereas the helpline, they can call them, they can answer their questions and make the carer or the family member be reassured. And ultimately that's going to help them support the person going through treatment. So I think that's a huge opportunity for carers and family that doesn't necessarily already exist.
Yeah, really great points. And Jodie, I think you wanted to add something there?
Yeah, I think for me personally, when I went through my treatment 7 years ago, there was no support group in Canberra, but I don't think I would have reached out to a support group, but I definitely would have reached out to the new line that you've got now, because it'd be something that I could just get on the phone, call, ask my questions, and then just go, okay, and have some time to think about it, because you get so much information at the time that you forget with your clinical people, that it's a great way to sort of, I didn't know what they sort of meant by that, but I didn't have time to ask the doctor or the speech pathologist about what that really meant. So I think I would have reached out a lot at that time.
Yeah, so having some options for people, as you said, Siobhan, and both of you have said that not everybody, a support group fulfills their needs, but they might pick up the phone or engage in a helpline. And I think the accessibility is a really important one. So, and so just to sort of finish up this conversation before I bring the rest of the group in, I don't think we haven't got any. I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions coming on. So I think, Jodie, you might have said you've referred a few people or mentioned the helpline. Have you had, and I know it's only been going a very short time, but have you had any feedback from those people or anyone in your group that has used it, and what are they really appreciating about it?
They haven't said that they've rang, but they have liked the thought that it's there to call, and it gave them some reassurance.
Yeah.
There's some more people who I've been talking to peer-to-peer in different states of Australia, and they like the thought that there's somebody else out there to talk to if they need to. They haven't used it yet, but I believe that they will.
Yeah, great. And have you, Siobhan, have you had any feedback yet?
I haven't had direct feedback yet, but I have definitely recommended it to quite a lot of people, and especially I think the people have more taken it on board and said, yes, I'm definitely going to access it, is those ones at the start of their treatment who just have a bit more questions or they're not quite sure yet, and they don't want, they want a bit of emotional sort of support or that reassurance before they've made all those connections.
Right. Well, thank you. Is there anything else you want to raise in relation to the helpline before we finish up our chat?
I think just quickly, I think just want to say, I guess we've already said it, it's not replacing clinical cares, but really this is amplifying it. You know,
Yeah.
it just leads to really managing the person and the people in their world holistically, and we shouldn't forget about the psychosocial aspects. But I think this is a wonderful initiative and a great service, and we're very fortunate that the HENCA is able to do this. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Siobhan. So it's sort of it's complementing really the clinical care, isn't it? It's adding to that, and I think Simon said earlier about you know, not being a passenger, being an advocate for yourself. So if you're not understanding what's being said to you, there's an opportunity to reach out to the helpline to find out more and to be a bit more empowered to find out and answer some of the questions you may have. Sorry, Jodie, did you want to say a last thing?
I was just going to say what you said. It's please reach out, people, and get some more information to make your decisions a bit easier. You know, the more information you got, the better decisions we can make, and your support from HENCA is a great asset to head and neck cancer in Australia.
Great way to finish there, Jodie. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Siobhan and Jodie. And we're just about out of time. I thought we were going to finish with lots of time to spare, but we haven't today. It's been terrific that there's so much been provided. I haven't got any more questions come through the chat, so unless there's anything else from the panel who want to say any last comments? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much to our speakers, Nadia, Belinda, Simon, Siobhan and Jodie. Thank you so much for your time and for presenting so much information today, but really giving us a wonderful snapshot of HENCA and the amazing work that that is done through HENCA, and particularly the helpline, which I think is just so exciting and such a wonderful resource and service for people who are either diagnosed or going through some form of head and neck cancer, and their carers and families and health professionals, of course, to refer. Don't forget that we're going to be sending you a webinar link to a survey link. So please give any feedback that you have about the webinar today. We really do appreciate the feedback, and that will help us to inform any future webinar topics and things that we do in the future. And again, I think Belinda gave a great overview of the resources that are available through HENCA. And I just want to remind everybody that don't forget the website. There are fact sheets, podcasts, animations, lots of examples of other webinars that have been done before. So please make yourself, make them available to yourself, and make sure you get onto the website and see all the resources that are there. All right, well, I think that's it from me, and thanks to the panel, and thanks to Gemma behind the scenes, who's helped to pull all this together and done all the administrative. So have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.